Many businesses start thinking about automation before they have made one thing clear enough. Who exactly should be handled in the same way? That question matters because automation depends on grouping. A system can only automate reliably when it knows which people, which situations, and which opportunities belong to the same logic. Without that clarity, automation does not create relevance. It creates repetition at scale. This is why segmentation matters before automation. Segmentation is what tells the business that not every lead should receive the same timing, the same message, the same level of urgency, or the same path of follow-up. Without segmentation, all leads are treated as if they belong to one operational category, and that category becomes too broad to be useful. Some leads are early, some are ready, some have strong fit, some are uncertain, some need education, some need fast movement, some should stay visible without receiving active pressure. If automation enters before those distinctions exist, the system starts moving people through logic that does not match their reality. The business may still see activity, messages are sent, tasks are triggered, sequences are running, statuses are changing. From the inside, this can feel like progress, but movement is not the same as alignment. A process can be automated and still be wrong. That is the hidden risk of skipping segmentation. The business becomes efficient at doing things that are not sufficiently specific. And efficiency without specificity rarely improves outcomes for long. It usually increases volume without increasing relevance. This is where many follow-up systems weaken. The business wants automation because manual work feels expensive. And manual work is expensive. It takes time. It depends on memory. It creates inconsistency. It becomes harder to maintain as volume rises. So the instinct to automate is understandable. But if the business has not yet separated different lead realities clearly enough, automation only hardens the confusion. Now generic follow-up becomes systematic. Weak timing becomes repeatable. Misaligned pressure becomes scalable. Early-stage leads receive logic meant for ready leads. High-intent opportunities receive the same sequence as low-priority ones. The business does not remove waste. It organizes it. That is why segmentation should not be treated as a refinement layer for later. It is part of building a system that deserves automation at all. Before the business asks, what should happen automatically, it has to ask, for which type of lead should this happen in the first place? That question changes the design completely. Because once lead categories become clearer, automation no longer has to carry the entire burden of judgment. It only has to execute logic that was already made more accurate upstream. That is where automation starts becoming useful. Not when it replaces thought, but when it follows thought that has already been structured well enough to repeat safely. This is why segmentation comes before scale. Not because categorization looks organized, but because different opportunities need different operating logic. And unless that logic is defined first, automation will only make the system faster at being generic. What makes this especially dangerous is that automation tends to hide its own weakness once it starts running. A manual process shows friction openly. Someone hesitates. Someone asks for context. Someone notices that the message does not fit. Someone adjusts because the situation feels different from the last one. That friction slows execution, but it also reveals where judgment is still needed. Automation removes that visible hesitation. It executes the rule. It follows the condition. It sends the message. It advances the step. If segmentation is weak, the system still moves. That is what makes the problem hard to detect. The business sees clean activity and assumes clean logic, but activity can be smooth while relevance is degrading underneath. A lead receives a sequence that feels too early. Another receives one that feels too generic. Another is pressured when what they actually needed was more context or more time. None of this always creates immediate failure. That is why it survives. The lead may still stay in the system. The message may still be delivered. The sequence may still appear to perform. But alignment weakens gradually. And gradual misalignment is one of the hardest operational problems to notice because it rarely looks dramatic in the moment. It looks like lower responsiveness, softer momentum, longer delays, opportunities that remain technically active without progressing with enough energy. The business may blame copy, timing, or lead quality. Sometimes those are factors. But very often, the deeper issue is simpler. The same automation logic is being applied to opportunities that should not be treated as if they belong to the same category. This is why segmentation is not just about organization. It is about protecting meaning. A sequence only works when the business can say, with reasonable confidence, that the people inside it should receive the same operational logic. Not identical personalities, not identical industries, but similar enough conditions that the same rhythm, the same type of message, and the same next step structure still make sense. That is a much stricter standard than many businesses use. They often segment too late or too loosely. They group leads together because it is simpler for the system, not because the logic is accurate enough. But simplicity at the wrong level creates expensive outcomes. The business saves design effort up front, then pays for the loss of relevance later. That cost shows up in weaker engagement, heavier follow-up, more manual correction, and lower confidence in what the automation is actually doing. Once that starts happening, teams usually respond in predictable ways. They add more messages, they tweak the copy, they insert more delays, they create exceptions around the system. But those fixes do not solve the real issue if the underlying categories remain too broad. The automation is still operating without enough discrimination. And automation without discrimination does not reduce complexity well, it redistributes it. The sequence becomes easier to launch but harder to trust. That is why segmentation has to be treated as part of system design, not as a cosmetic layer added afterward. It defines the boundaries inside which automation can stay relevant. Without those boundaries, the system may still be efficient, but it will be efficient at delivering generic logic to situations that required clearer distinction. And that is rarely the kind of scale a business actually wants.
A stronger system works differently. It does not begin by asking what can be automated fastest. It begins by asking which types of leads actually deserve different handling. That changes everything. Now the business is not building automation around convenience alone. It is building it around distinctions that already matter operationally. One group may need faster follow-up because intent is active and momentum is fragile. Another may need slower cadence because readiness is low but future value is still real. Another may need more education before stronger next-step pressure makes sense. Another may need very little active attention at all because the fit is weak or the likelihood of movement is low. Once those categories are visible, automation becomes easier to trust, not because it is doing more, but because it is doing less with more accuracy. That is the real goal, not maximum automation, useful automation. Useful automation removes manual effort from logic that has already been clarified. It does not ask the system to invent judgment on its own. It asks the system to execute distinctions the business has already made clearly enough. This is why segmentation improves more than messaging. It improves timing, it improves pressure, it improves follow-up rhythm. It improves what next step actually means for different types of opportunities. It also improves restraint, because once categories are clearer, the business stops trying to move every lead through the same level of intensity. That reduces noise. Some leads get more urgency, some get more patience, some get lighter nurturing. Some remain visible without being treated as if they are close to decision. Now automation supports reality instead of flattening it, and that is the real threshold. If segmentation is weak, automation will always be forced to operate at too generic a level. If segmentation is strong enough, automation becomes more precise, more credible, and less expensive to maintain. That is why segmentation matters before automation. Not because categories look organized, but because the system cannot scale relevance until relevance has first been defined. Once that definition exists, automation stops being a blunt instrument. It starts becoming a more disciplined way to protect momentum, reduce wasted effort, and move different kinds of leads with logic that actually fits them.